So welcome everyone. Thanks for joining. I'm RC Victorino. I'm from BuildOps. Glad to have you all here. And for those unfamiliar, BuildOps is the only all-in-one management software built specifically for commercial contractors. And if you want to learn more about that, you can go over to buildops.com, check out about that. But today, we're diving into strategies for balancing sales and operations, managing growth, building a sustainable sales structure, all perfect things for those folks out there like you all who are running lean teams. Quick housekeeping before we really dive in, though. If you have questions, if you have comments, by all means, we want this to be kind of a conversation, engaging kind of thing. You probably won't see a chat button at the bottom of your Zoom screen, but you will see Q&A. So use that Q&A. I'll be monitoring that Q&A, and I'll surface any of these questions. And any questions that we can't answer live, we'll try to get back to you with some answers as well after the fact. All right, done with the housekeeping. On to the show. So I'm thrilled to be joined by a couple folks today. First, number one is Dave Sloan. He's the president of Sloan Mechanical Services in Pittsburgh. He runs a growing mechanical contracting business and brings valuable firsthand experience managing both sales and operations. And then I have Kevin Cho, who's my colleague and also a sales enablement specialist here at BuildOps. And his expertise lies in helping teams streamline their sales processes to scale effectively. So before we dive in, I want to get some context from you all here. So I'm going to pop up a poll. Good luck to me. You should see the poll popping up on your screen. If you could take a couple seconds to just fill that out, it gives us an opportunity to understand the context of the people who are here. Just reading it out to you all so you all have context. So when it comes to sales growth, where do you feel your team could improve the most? Identifying high value leads, closing deals faster, streamlining follow-ups and customer communications, or leveraging data for better decision making. Now I understand that for many of you, maybe all of the above, but if you can pick the one that's the thing you can improve the most, that'd be awesome. Meanwhile, I'll leave this poll open for a little bit while Dave, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and Sloan Mechanical Services?
Yeah, sure. Thanks again for having me. So I came from managing a pretty large HVAC service contractor here in Pittsburgh. I left last year and formed this company earlier this year. So we just celebrated our 7th month anniversary. So we are strictly, what I say, a commercial HVAC and service contract, a commercial HVAC service and maintenance contractor that also does projects and building automation. So right now it's a team of myself, 5 technicians and 1 person in the office.
Also now more housekeeping. I just want to give you guys the responses from the poll. So it looks like the number one thing that people want to improve the most is streamlining follow-ups and customer communication. So just about half of you all said that. And then tied for beneath that is identifying high value leads and closing deals faster. Data was not a concern for most of you folks. So I feel like it's almost like a Maslow's hierarchy here, right? Like you can't focus on that really nice, superfluous, awesome thing that is data until you sort of build the foundation. So does that ring true to you, by the way, Dave? So we've got streamlining follow-ups and customer communication as something people really want to improve upon.
Yeah, for sure. It's easy sometimes to generate the lead and talk to somebody and they say, yeah, like check back with me in a couple months, and then it falls off the radar and you never do anything with it. It's so common.
Yeah. I have to personal anecdote. Like I'm so anal with my project management software tool that like anytime I have a thing like that, like I use Asana, by the way. I put it as a task in Asana, and like it's so funny. So I have random things that I've done like 9 months ago that like just pop up on my calendar like today or tomorrow or whatever. I'm like, oh yeah, crap. I have to like follow up with that person. It works well. So Kevin, from your experience, what are some early signs that it's time for business to formalize its sales approach?
Yeah, I think there's probably 2 scenarios. One is if you're even considering hiring a salesperson, that's probably one scenario. Formalizing and standardizing early is pretty important. If you're scaling out your sales team, if you're maybe 2xing or 1.5xing the amount of people that you have on that team, also a really good indicator that it's probably time to start to standardize things from a hiring perspective, an interview perspective, getting all the documentation and training ready for your salespeople that are coming on board. So probably those 2 scenarios.
Like what kind of documentation and standardization would one need to put into place at this, if they're at that mindset that they're formalizing a sales approach? Like what should they be looking at specifically?
Yeah, I think it comes in a couple different. So like basically you want to make sure that like you build some sort of framework for consistent messaging. So I'm assuming a lot of folks on the call are, probably owner slash sellers or some sort of manager slash seller. But if you can sort of condense down what the most valuable pieces of messaging that you found in your sales call, document those things, any sort of like objections that you guys have handled, and then any value that you guys bring over or the differentiators between you and your competition. If you can document all that, it gives you a really good foundation to start to train your reps so that everybody, whether it's one salesperson or multiple, has like the same consistent messaging. There's no like deviation, there's no confusion later.
Do you do that, Dave? Do you have that in place, Dave? Some sort of messaging standardization sort of thing?
We're working on it, but nothing really like
So how would you work on like, so a lot of, by the way, for folks watching right now, so a lot of the information that or experience that Kevin and I have specifically are more to a tech background than to the trades industry. So Dave will help, really like gut check us honestly. But when I think about some things like differentiation of competitors, but also like experiences, like what are the objections you're getting during phone calls? Like we've got tools like Gong, for example, which are like, I don't know what we did before that, honestly, but like you can just surface a thing like Gong, and like now with AI, like you can literally like ask these questions and get these answers. Like you can compile a list of things so fast to understand. But Dave, like what would you be doing in your business to do the same thing?
Again, I'm not the best at setting the appointments and the cold calling, but I think a lot of our success in my past, and especially now with this company, is our culture and what we're about. So I think one of the things that gets us meetings a lot is not really focusing on, hey, we have the best technicians or anything like that. It's more talking about who we are as our people and what like our values are. And normally that's what gets the people to want to talk with us. That we're not a big corporation about numbers. It's more of a people oriented, customer service driven type thing.
But when you're looking to nail down messaging, do you try to like reflect upon objections that you've experienced or like the aha moments, right? There are also these like there might be recurring like the line that gets everyone really juiced up about whatever it may be. Like, are those things that you're trying to compile somewhere or surface, or are you like reflecting at the end of the day and being like, like what are the things that didn't work well, and like kind of jot those down?
Yeah, I mean, and I don't know if I'm answering it right, but anytime if talking to a prospective customer, my favorite thing is to ask, what are the things you really love about your current provider, and what are the things you hate? And normally those things that they don't like is where I can really capitalize.
That's really cool. These calls aren't being recorded, right? Like when you're having these conversations with, yeah. So that's the tricky part, right? For again, in the tech-based world, like they're all being recorded. It's sort of like assumed, right?
Yeah.
I would, just as a random side note, recommend that if anyone on the call is having these sort of same conversations where you are asking like, what do you like or dislike about your current providers, take a few minutes to like, ChatGPT is a wonderful tool. And in fact, like if you download the app on your phone, like you don't even have to write this stuff in. You can literally at the end of the phone call, tap in the little microphone icon or whatever it looks like in the app and just repeat this stuff and ask ChatGPT to kind of focus on like, what are the objections? What are our pain points? What are the opportunities for us? How do we stand out? And ChatGPT will spit that out for you. And you just keep on compiling that. You will have this resource for you that Kevin's talking about that you need to use to standardize for your sales, eventual sales team, knock on wood.
Well, it's funny though, because there's definitely a trend in our industry that the pain points are always pretty similar. It's different technicians coming out every single time. It's not getting quotes quick enough, not getting invoice quick enough, not getting the information there quick enough. So, just through my career, we've been able to compile a pretty good trend of those types of things.
Yeah. So I know referrals are huge, particularly early on. We talked off air a little bit about that as well. So Dave, what limitations are there with referrals and word of mouth that you've experienced?
So for right now, for us being a brand new company, referrals have really been great for us because we built some really strong operational policies built strictly around customer service. So a lot of our business has really been referral based because we'll do a service call or a job with one customer and someone else calls us and say, hey, I heard great things. But we're already seeing it. And I know that eventually those are going to dry up because eventually these friends have talked to all their friends and those types of referrals are just going to stop. But as much as I'm taking them and I love referrals, I'm really focusing more, I look at referrals as an added bonus for sure, but I'm always trying to just keep building the pipeline.
So then, Kevin, how do folks like Dave expand beyond referrals and fill that pipeline without relying on the cherry on top of the bonus, essentially, of referrals?
Yeah. I mean, referrals are kind of the cream of the crop, but whether it's you as in like you're actively going out and finding time and prospecting, or if it's another salesperson or group of salespeople. I mean, we do a variety of different things. Our sort of outbound team, they use like Google to prospect in their local area. They use like the yellow pages, some of them, Yelp. That's sort of like the manual way of doing it. But the biggest way we do it is by using tech. So we have a couple of different pieces of software that like one shows us the data of like which prospective customers are out there in like a certain like distance, a couple miles away or what have you. And then there's additional software that we use to automate that prospecting so that, emails get sent out on, 9 a.m. on every other day. There's reminders for our sellers to call them and take action. So I think tech is a pretty big piece of that. It seems like it's being used a lot more frequently with the shops that we've been talking to as well.
Which leads to actually so for I don't know, reporters transparency, whatever it may be. So Dave is a Build Ops customer as well, and so I just wanted to put that out there. But Dave, so that kind of brings up an idea of like, so what kind of technology are you using to do all the things that you want to do as a small shop, essentially?
So so at the end of the day, cold calling and trying to build those leads takes the most amount of time for me. Because you can open up a phone book or you can go on Google Earth and look at a building and say, hey, I want that, and call the receptionist and try to find the operations manager, the CEO. So really, I found that the most time consuming thing is finding that key decision maker and qualifying it as a real lead or not. So shortly after getting Build Ops live with our company, we found out about CRM Plus. And we signed on to that and implemented it. So I figured CRM Plus would be a good way for us to at least take the leads that we have and kind of build a workflow from the time I passed a building on the highway to calling on them, right? But then we learned about Pipeline Plus, which ties all together. And now just with like a 5-second search, I can bypass the receptionist. I don't need to really walk into the building. I know exactly who the CEO is with their cell phone number and their email address for the property manager. So between Pipeline Plus to CRM Plus, it's kind of seamlessly building our pipeline.
Random question, Kevin. So I want to make sure that folks understand we're not just trying to pitch like one particular software, right? And Dave, thank you for all the kind words about Build Ops, but like what kind of things should, because I think in the end we all agree, and off air we were talking about like how like a lot of, as a writer and as a content maker, a lot of my days filled talking to AI, ChatGPT. Like I rely on that thing so much, and it's made it possible for me to scale my efforts with minimal cost, and really honestly with very little additional effort on my part versus like managing another person might be actually, as we were talking off air, like can be challenging. It can actually, like, you think you're like offloading a lot of your efforts, but managing another human being is also, added burden to you. So I would love to know, Kevin, if you have any info on this, like what kind of things should someone like Dave look for when sort of sussing out like a tech tool, right? Like what would help them quite literally move the needle without slowing them down, without burning them too much, et cetera?
Yeah, it's a pretty good question. I mean, we go through software evaluations pretty frequently in my role. I think for me, only from my perspective, like we just have to make sure that the end user is going to be able to use it easily. That's pretty important for us. Like if it if we get some sort of software that's difficult to use, then the first person that they're going to contact is us to,
Right.
ask them to help or train. So that's a really easy sort of like user interface is really important to us. And then I think from there, it's just comparing and contrasting what features are most important to you. Zoom info is another great alternative for receiving data that Dave was talking about that we use. And so like if you were to compare, like Zoom info or Pipeline Plus or something like that, I'm sure that the features outside of like what it is foundationally is going to be a little bit different. So just kind of like I just do it the simple way, pros and cons. Like what do we get if we, go with this software and we don't go with that? Like what's most important to us and just stack rank it.
Uh, Stop me if I ask any questions that I shouldn't be asking, by the way, because I'm kind of converging some off-air conversations with on-air conversations. But Kevin, you mentioned how like the end user being able to use the tool is important. Dave right now is probably the one who would be using the tool. However, we talked a little bit about Dave. You are looking to make your first sales hire, which then I would assume like that person may or may not be involved in using that technology, which is why that thought came up to me. I'd love to know a little bit more about that because the conversation we were having off air was really, I think, useful for the audience, for context for everyone. The battle within is like Dave feels he's ready to make this first hire, but what does that mean? Does that mean? And I mean, Dave, I don't want to steal your thunder. You can kind of expand on it a little bit, but like, at what level expertise should be hiring for? Like, how does he identify the ROI? What's the right choice? You want to talk a little bit about that challenge that you have right now, Dave?
Yeah. Yeah. So we've already kind of took on a pretty good book of business, and it's taking most of my time just handling the existing customers and referrals that are coming our way. But I know that every time I'm not, picking up the phone or trying to find new business, I'm just leaving money on the table at the end of the day. So I know that I can't do both things at once, and I need someone constantly trying to drive new business. So I think I've made it my goal for early 2025 to bring on a dedicated salesperson that will live in the CRM and pipeline. My struggle is, especially being a new company, do I go after like an entry level type person that maybe has no industry experience that's just going to do lead generation, knowing that that's going to require a lot of my time to manage that person? Or do I go for the seasoned veteran, plentiful experienced salesperson that can I can say, here's the keys, go do your thing. And we have touch-based meetings. I see pros and cons to both sides, and I'm not really quite sure yet what to do.
And Kevin, of course, has the answer, right? Kevin, of course.
Well, hopefully, I'm curious, Dave, from your perspective, like what's the is the cons of getting someone a little bit more seasoned? Is it just the price tag that comes with it?
Yeah. Yeah. 100%.
Okay.
That's the price tag.
Yeah. Gotcha. Yeah. I mean, I've seen it go both ways. Right. Like I've seen I've seen startups basically hire, less seasoned folks, people who need a lot of hands-on training. And I've seen it the other way around too. I don't think there's a right answer. It just really depends on, um, how much time you really have to invest into that person. I think regardless, you're going to have to invest a decent to good amount of time, whether it's seasoned or not, or whether he or she is seasoned or not. So that's a big part. But I do think that what helped us was we actually sort of recalibrated our interview process earlier this year to really find someone who's really well-rounded, kind of can live the values of our sales methods and our company. And I think we had a pretty big turning point from redoing that interview process, because we found sellers who could do a little bit of everything, right? Like they're seasoned, but not like super experienced, but they can also do some of the outbound, some of the day-to-day work. So that was a big part of us finding the right folks to bring onto our team. But I don't know if that strictly answers your question, RC, or what you think about that, Dave. But
I have a random question to build off that. So Dave, you made a passing comment about industry background or comes from the industry or not. So is that not a given? Like, I don't have a sales background, right? I'm not in sales anyway. So I guess if I ladder it over to me, like, yes, I adapt new expertises based on the industry that I'm working on. So that's the same with sales, right? Like, would it be ideal for you, Dave, if someone had industry expertise? Do you believe that is that much of a more like a needle mover, or is it like if they are in sales, they can sell a pencil, right? Like,
Yeah, well, I think it depends. if if they're coming into an existing sales team, then I like the non-industry experience.
okay,
They have to learn a little bit, because what we're selling, especially with maintenance contracts, is it's hard, and you're selling to property managers who speak the same language, and
right,
and you can't come in there and just sell. You have to be able to talk the talk.
right. See, that's exactly right. Like that's what I have the benefit of, I don't have conversations with people. So I have the benefit of time, right? Like I
Yeah,
can manipulate my mindset through words and again, ChatGPT, but
yeah.
yeah, exactly. I kind of want to shift gears for a second. So not everyone is in the position for early 2025 to expand to make their first sales hire. So they are likely still doing solo. Kevin, for those folks who are doing solo for a foreseeable future here, uh, what are some like practical time saving things they can do and you might have mentioned some of this earlier on, but how can they keep on doing what they're doing realistically without divesting too much from the rest of their operations, essentially?
yeah, I'm coming up on 2 years here, and when I initially started at Build Ops, we were running really lean, and so we were trying to find like free, sort of like practical time saving methods. And I think one of the easier ones is just blocking off time on your calendar and really sticking to it. Whether you use Outlook or Google, that's been huge for us. And that's a pretty big one. We do like blocks basically, where we just remind our sellers to put an hour to 2 hours in the morning, an
Mm.
hour to 2 hours late in the day or in the evening, and no meetings can be like, it's sacred basically. So that's like a really simple, easy, free, pretty much way to do that.
Do you do that, Dave? Do you block off time?
I try to. I really do. Um, a lot of the reasons some of the customers like working with us is our responsiveness.
Right.
So, it's one of those things that when the phone rings, I answer no matter what. And
Yeah.
all it takes is that one call, and the next thing you know, 30 minutes later, you're it's hard.
Yeah. It's the recurring theme here. And it's so funny because it definitely like, it doesn't diverge from, but it's a different sentiment from the last webinar we had, which if I remember, I'll email the folks in attendance the link to that too, so you can watch it. It's also pretty short. Uh, but I was talking about the last people that I talked to in a webinar last month. They're a much larger operation, right? And so like we were talking off air, how like they can actually like they fire customers all the time, and it's much when for folks who are in leaner teams and certainly in like earlier in their growth stage, they can't really afford to do that, right? And so you're taking on so much, and the challenge is trying to not sacrifice the thing that stands you apart from other people, which is the service. And that's why we're trying to figure out how to possibly scale and when to identify essentially when to hire this new salesperson. Also, random note, I know we have 4 minutes left and we're closing up. One more question after this, but ad hoc question. Kevin, you and I talked about this a long time ago when I fielded this topic to you, and I don't know if you have any input on this, but is fractional sales team a thing, like a freelance, a contracting salesperson, a thing that Dave or other people can look into? Is that even worth their value rather than hiring full time? And Dave, I would love your input on thoughts on that. But Kevin, you first.
Yeah, I've worked for organizations in the past that have had part-time sellers. You're essentially paying for what you're getting what you pay for, right? It's the amount of leads, the amount of pipeline that you're going to be generating, the amount of revenue that you'll be bringing in is going to be a fraction of what it is. So I think if you're in a position where you're sort of like overflowing with a lot of work, you're trying to manage your time in between managing your own book of business with expanding and getting new business elsewhere. It's probably time to consider what a full-time hire would look like, is my opinion.
Dave, thoughts?
So I've tried that in the past using like a lead generation company, and it can be good. It can also not be. And it really comes down to how much of your time you're willing to put into it, because you can't just hire them and have them take care of it. You have to be listening to the call recordings, providing feedback all the time. It's like you have a full-time salesperson with the amount of management that goes into it.
Yeah.
So it really comes down to how much you want to put into it.
Okay. Final question before we leave. So Dave, what advice would you share with someone who's in a similar position as you, looking to grow sales while keeping operations run smoothly?
Probably is, for me at least, just making sure you have someone that you can depend on. So if we're talking for sales, for me, it's finding someone like my person in the office who I can trust and rely on to handle the day-to-day when I'm not around. So if I am setting customer meetings or I'm looking at work, I don't have to worry about what's going on in the office or with the technicians. I think it's just having someone that you can trust as an extension of you.
That's awesome. Cool. All right. Well, thanks everyone for joining. Again, look out for an email, I believe by tomorrow, from us with a link to this webinar. Hopefully, if I remember, last month's webinar as well. Again, if you want to hear a little bit more about BuildOps, you can visit us at buildops.com. And yeah, thank you so much, Dave and Kevin, for your time. This was awesome. Really appreciate it. And have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thank you.